In my last build video, you guys seem to appreciate the transparency about how it wasn't a new build, given how late we are into Heresy and how close we are to Edge of Fate, but it was put up for people who had never tried said build, or for new players still learning builds. So today, I'd like to do something similar, but for Warlocks this time. This particular build is actually something I talked about around when GMs were first launching for Heresy, an endgame Arc Warlock build which centered around getting your super within literal seconds with Geomags and Delicate Tomb. Funny enough, plenty of people said that this will never work in high-end content, this build is not good, and so on. Boy, are those people looking stupid right now, huh? Anyway, this version of the build has the same base concept, except we're going to be swapping out one component for something people have told me to try for months now, and that is Cold Heart. Cold Heart has been lackluster for the majority of D2's lifespan. It had a brief shiny moment at base launch where it was great versus Callus in the Leviathan raid, but ever since it's pretty much fallen off a cliff until recently. Now, Cold Heart does two main things that make this weapon viable. The first is its intrinsic trait, Cold Fusion, which lets you deal more damage to a target the longer it remains on it. Then we have the actual weapon perk, Longest Winter, which generates ionic traces while it's in its high damage form. For those unfamiliar with ionic traces, when picked up, they grant you ability energy. This includes energy to your super meter, and now you probably see where this is going. We are then going to pair it with Geomag Stabilizers, exotic boots that specifically feed you energy for your Chaos Reach when collecting ionic traces. Geomags also allow you to extend the duration of Chaos Reach when damaging targets and let you sprint to get bull charge stacks over time if you're near max stacks. And believe it or not, this isn't the only way we're going to be feeding ourselves insane super energy gains, but we'll get back to that in a second. Let's talk about the ability kit first. Kicking things off are the aspects. With the release of Heresy, Arc Warlock received a new aspect, Ionic Sentry. This aspect is like 3 different flavors of broken. This aspect allows you to build up stacks to summon an Ionic Sentry via kinetic kills, arc weapon kills, or arc ability kills. Once maxed, you can summon the turret by using your grenade, which doesn't even take your actual grenade charge, by the way. As the sentry hits the field, the first thing it'll do is blind enemies around it, something a lot of people seem to overlook. It's incredibly helpful, especially if you're in champion content where it can stun something like an unstoppable champion. Next, it will then start chain lightning between nearby targets, and each hit will grant you stacks of bull charge, or it can just proc bull charge for you as a cherry on top. And guess what happens when all these enemies die to your arc weapons or abilities? They make ionic traces to feed you super, and that is thanks to our second aspect, Electrostatic Mind. Electrostatic Mind does 2 main things. First, it allows us to create ionic traces from arc abilities or jolted/blinded targets when defeated, and then when picking up an ionic trace, it makes us amplified. Amplified is a massive addition to this build with the new rework. Now Amplified automatically gives us 15% damage resist against all enemies, and it also makes us harder to hit by those enemies when we are amplified. In theory, you could stay amplified forever with a permanent 50% DR as long as there are targets to make you traces. Now for standard abilities, you could run whatever you'd like, honestly, but I ended up settling on Ball Lightning for more of a range option, and Pulse Grenade as I think it's the best grenade the Arc class has. As for fragments, going from left to right, we've got the following. First is Spark of Resistance. This goes hand in hand with the amplified changes. It gives you 25% damage resist when surrounded by enemies on top of the 15% that you're getting from amplified. Number 2 is Spark of Discharge. This gives you the chance to create an ionic trace from arc weapon kills, and then collecting an ionic trace also gives you a stack of bull charge. Number 3 is Spark of Frequency. Specifically, this is here to give us increased stacks of bull charge from all sources, essentially letting us spam bull charge lightning even faster. And lastly, we have Spark of Ions. Defeating a target with jolting or bull charge creates an ionic trace. And that is the kit. So as you can see, we have a ton of synergy going on with generating ionic traces for laughably quick supers. But you know what's funny? There's still more. This time in the form of the artifact. There's 2 mods in this artifact in particular. Those are Elemental Siphon and Elemental Supercharger. Elemental Siphon is a mod that creates an elemental pickup matching our equipped super as long as we get rapid blows with a kinetic weapon or a weapon matching our super type. In this case, it is Arc. Since we're using Arc here, the elemental pickup in question will be ionic traces. But that's not all. Thanks to the bonus effect of this mod, when we do pick up our ionic traces for super energy, the game also gives you super energy when you pick up said elemental pickup, for double dipping super energy basically. Then, with Elemental Supercharger, when you defeat exhausted enemies with a weapon matching your super type, again, it's Arc, you are granted super energy. And you might be thinking, exhaust? How are we doing that? You can exhaust enemies by simply using an overload weapon, and wouldn't you know it, trace rifles are overload weapons this season, so Cold Heart already fits the bill. But we can take this one step further, and let's say you're out of Cold Heart ammo. Instead, you can swap to your heavy weapon of the build, Watchful Eye, an arc machine gun available from Nether in this episode, and machine guns are also an overload weapon, so you can still take advantage of our entire kit, plus the artifact mods I just mentioned, and reap the benefits. As for the other artifact mods, I'll have the full set on screen for anyone that wants to copy the list, but to simplify things, aside from the two mods I just mentioned, we have Overload Machine Guns and Overload Trace Rifles for the exhaust that I just mentioned, Beam Medic to heal you and your nearby allies, Harsh Refraction to do more damage with Trace Rifles that are affected by an elemental debuff matching that element type, so for example, Blinding in this case for Arc, and then Limit Break to buff the damage of our Chaos Reach Super. Now we'll close up with the mods here in a second for the armor, but I wanted to answer one question before that, and that is, what do you think was better, Delicate Tomb or Cold Heart? I got this a lot in the Delicate Tomb video, so I wanted to just answer it now since I've used both. I think for the highest end of endgame content, Delicate Tomb actually still wins in the end. I think Delicate Tomb will create you more traces overall, and I think it just does more damage to chunkier targets, orange bars, yellow bars, etc. Cold Heart is good, don't get me wrong, it makes you plenty of traces and you get your super very fast, but the one part where I think it falls off is if you're fighting a chunky target like a yellow bar, and it takes some time to ramp up your damage, and even then, you're wasting a ton of ammo on one target, and you kind of just run out quickly. Delicate Tomb is built for shooting down these chunky targets, and you just get them down in a couple of shots and guarantee yourself ionic traces. That's just my 2 cents, let's move on. And here's a quick rundown for the armor mods that I have on. So in my helmet, I have 2 copies of Dynamo to get super cooldown reduction, and also when I use my Rift near enemies, I get a chunk of super energy, getting me faster to my super. 1 copy of Harmonic Siphon to make ores with my arc weapons. In my gloves, I have 1 loader to reload said weapons, 1 copy of Bolstering Detonation to get class ability energy when we do damage with our grenade, and 1 copy of Firepower to create an orb with our grenade. The chest doesn't really matter, pro and resist for whatever content that you're doing that matches that content. In my boots, I have 1 copy of Recuperation for health, 1 copy of Absolution for ability cooldown reduction, and 1 copy of Arc Weapon Surge just to buff the damage a little bit of my arc weapons. In my class item, I have Distribution, again for ability cooldown reasons, 1 copy of Special Finisher just to get special ammo if I need it, and then 1 copy of Powerful Attraction for when I do Rift, I pick up orbs around me that I made. And that's the build. Hope you guys enjoy. I will have a dim link down in the description below for anyone that wants to try it out. In the meantime, if you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing today. It does help the channel grow and is much appreciated. If you want to go the extra mile, you could leave a like and or comment below as well. If you don't know what to leave as a comment, you could leave Cold Heart as the comment. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.